What's going on, guys? It's Danny from Slow Restoration, and today it's been a while since we did anything with the Quadrasteer on video. Anyway, we've been driving and using this. It's ready for some maintenance. We have an oil change to do. When you fire this thing up, it's very common for these 6-liter LSs in the 2500s especially, sometimes the 1500s also, but to pop the heads off the exhaust manifold bolts at the head and have a ticking sound. So we'll open this up, fire it up. I don't know if you can hear that or not, but it definitely has the tick. When you rev it up, it's more profound or more pronounced. So we're going to address that today. We're going to do an oil change. We're going to give it a once over because we're getting ready to tow the Jayco Eagle with this, and we want it to be good and ready to go. So the manifold job kind of sucks, to be honest. You normally, to make more room, pull the inner fender out. It's really not that hard to pull out, but it's a little time consuming. Get that out of your way, and then you can get right into the exhaust manifold. Take what's left there of the bolts out, take the 3 bolts at the collector downpipe off, get the manifold out of your way. On this side, it's just that. On that side, the passenger side, you got to pull the engine dipstick tube also. But let's get it in the garage. But by the way, once this thing warms up, that tick completely goes away. So the exhaust manifold heats up enough to swell and it seals up, and you don't hear that at all. But it's kind of annoying when you start it up and it's cold to hear that tick. So we might as well just fix it. This is a very nice 2005 Yukon XL 2500 Quadrasteer. So let's get it fixed. We have it in the garage here, and this thing does have, believe it or not, 161,000 miles on it. It's extremely clean. We got our oil drained, new filter on. We'll top the oil off as soon as we drop it down to finish our work up there. We did go ahead and remove all 4 tires. We're going to rotate them. It makes it a little bit easier to get in, get that wheel liner off and reach in to the exhaust manifold. We'll show you that in a second. But since we're up in the air, the first thing we're going to do is actually take these 1, 2, 3 per side. There's studs and nuts that hold the exhaust downpipe to the manifold down here. We'll go ahead and get them off out of the way. Most of the time you can hit them with an impact and they will zip right off. Be careful though, you don't want to break them. Once we get them off, we'll drop it down and continue. Actually, we'll drop it down enough to get that, continue to get that wheel liner out, and then we'll have a clear view of that exhaust manifold right in through the opening. We got all 3 of these nuts off. They're 15 millimeter, and they can be a little tricky. Just make sure you're all the way on them. But like I said, normally the hammering action of that impact pops them right loose. We're going to go ahead and do a grease job along with our oil change. It's always good practice to check your brakes, lube everything, check for anything that's loose or needs replacing as you're going. So like I said, the next step is removing this wheel liner, actually on both sides. And these are very easy. You just, you can get a pry tool, you can take a screwdriver and a pair of pliers or whatever you have. This works a little bit nicer without messing the fastener up though. You pretty much get under the center part of it. You can just pull out on the center, and that will release the connector. You can, if it doesn't fall right out, sometimes road grime gets built in, especially at the bottom here. You can just pry it out and pull, the whole thing pulls out. So when that centerpiece goes in, it expands that and locks it in place. But we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, a couple push pins, 9, 10 on the push pins, and a couple wires that connect, and this whole plastic fender liner will come out. So there's actually no bolts in it, it's just all plastic clips. We have all the clips loose, and as you can see, that comes loose fairly easy. There will be some grime back there, just normal road grime that we need to clean up. We do have, looks like only one wire that's pushed in here. Now on these two, they are not the normal, they're the like Christmas tree push-in connector. Be careful with them because they do go into your washer bottle. So I'll finish getting this out and we'll have that clear view I've been talking about. Wheel liner's out, and as promised, you can get a clear shot. This side's a little bit better shot because there's less in the way, and I have my light already set up over here. So 1, 2, 3, 4 bolts in the front are fine. There's 6 bolts in these manifolds. The back 2 are actually broken. And if I zoom in there, you can see that one. The head's popped off, but there is some sticking out. So once we get this manifold off, we should be able to heat that up some. Maybe weld a nut to it, maybe not, maybe just vice grip it and get that out. But before we go there that far, we need to get rid of these spark plug wires, which we are doing a tune-up. Forgot to mention that too. We are doing a tune-up at the same time. We have to pull the plugs out anyway. You don't have to, but it's much easier. It's really easy to break a spark plug when you're doing this. So just get them out of your way, and we're going to do plugs and wires. And like I said, let's see if I can grab the light. Should be able to see that the dipstick tube runs down through the manifold. So we're going to take that 15mm bolt right there off. Battery died, but this bolt comes out right here. It's 15mm, and then you can grab your dipstick tube. And this one, because this truck is so clean, I can tell right now it's going to pull right out. Most of the time they get very, very stuck. They get rusted in down at the block. You can try some penetrating fluid. You can also try to take a pair of vice grips down there and help work it back and forth. But this one's going to pull right out, so we're good with that. With the rest of those bolts loosened and out, now our manifold is actually loose. We'll go ahead and wiggle it out through this hole here. We do have our exhaust manifold gasket here. Inspect this. We'll pull it out here and look. These are reusable. If it didn't damage it, we'll look. We have a new set on hand if we need them. And it's probably a good idea, since you're going this far, just go ahead and put new ones in. But these are reusable. If you take them off, they're a steel shim. I think they're 3-layer, and they do seal up pretty well when you do reuse them. So we got our exhaust manifold off, and we'll set it down here. You do want to inspect these closely. Sometimes they do crack in like this area or this area. This one appears to be clean. You can see on this back here, because these 2 bolts were broken, that it was definitely leaking. So we'll clean this up and finish inspecting it. There is a O-ring gasket back here that stays usually in the downpipe, but make sure it didn't come off with your manifold. So there, manifold's out of the way, and you can see one, I think you can see that, 2 broken manifold bolts. They are sticking out of the head. So sometimes these break and they're actually recessed into the head, or they're flush. Either way, I do not drill these. I weld to them and get them out that way. Heat around it if you need to, but they normally come right out, especially when they're like this. Really, it's very easy just to slip a nut over top, weld that stud to the nut. You have something to grip onto very easily, and as you're welding, it heats that up and breaks the Loctite, and they back right out normally. Sometimes they can be a pain, but very, very last ditch effort will I ever drill these, because it's very easy to walk off. These up here are a little more accessible. This one back here is really kind of, this shield is in the way. I've seen some guys bend this out of the way, but I think we can get in there and work with that. And again, we're doing a tune-up, so new plugs and wires are going back as we go. And there's our first one out. As you can see, I vice gripped it. Well, I think you can see that. You can see the threads. This one actually didn't need heat at all. As you can see, I'm touching it. It actually backed right out. Very rarely does that happen. So let's grab a hold of the second one. Okay, well, it's loose already. I think I can almost spin that out by my fingers. Not quite, but we'll get the vice grips on it and finish taking that one out. And that's rare. Normally they're a fight, but we'll see how lucky we get on the other side. And just as I say that, it was loose because it actually broke off again, and this time it's actually recessed slightly into the head. So now we have to weld. So we'll get set up, get our welder, and when I do these, I just make sure I'm welding on that stud and just build kind of a weld blob up enough to get it out and get something on there, vice grips or whatever you want. If you want to put a nut on there and weld that to it, that works too. We may end up doing that just because it's so tight to get in there, but I guess I spoke too soon. We were able to get it out, and here's what we did. Get some light on the situation here. So we just took a nut and welded to the stud. I typically try to get a little piece off of the stud first, put the nut on there, hold it with a pair of vice grips, and then fill it full of weld. Like I said, it heats the stud as it goes. It didn't come first try. As you can see, that one twisted off, and there's like 5 more of these, so be patient. It will come out. You might only get a 1/16 of a turn at a time for each nut you weld on, but eventually it will break loose. Those heat cycles really do help. So we have it all the bolts, broken bolts out of this side. That back port we cleaned up a little bit. The rest of them look good, and we're getting ready to go back together here. We got the exhaust manifold back on, all the new bolts back in. We got the dipstick tube placed back in. It's kind of right in behind the starter. We're in the block where it goes. We're going to put our bolt back in. We still have these 3 bolts. We have new spark plugs in. We're going to put our wires on. A lot easier to do all that while this inner fender is already out. So all that's going to be taken care of. We can pop this inner fender back in and move to the other side. We've moved over to the side now. As you can see, we got the exhaust manifold out, spark plugs out, wires off. This back, same on this side. So the back 2 bolts were broke. Sometimes it's the front, sometimes it's the back. On this particular one, it was the back 2 on each side. Same thing happened here. The second one up came out with vice grips, no heat at all. The back one here is actually already broke off, recessed in a little bit, so we'll definitely have to do some welding there. All right, as you can see from in there, we have that nut welded on. It's probably still hot, probably gonna burn myself, but we did get it to spin out. It only took 2 to do it. Now it's cooled down pretty good. So we'll pull that out, and that's kind of the way it looks. Not pretty, got the job done though. So now we can get all that cleaned up, get that manifold dropped back down in there, gasket, new bolts, new plugs, wires, and get this side button back up also. We topped off the oil, greased the whole front end. Actually, the front end and the Quadrasteer has a couple grease fittings in it too. So let's go ahead and fire this thing up. See how we did. Wow, nice and quiet. Awesome. That needed fixed for a while. I'm glad we finally got to it. If you're very attentive, you'll notice I did leave the inner fenders out. That's because I'm gonna wash all that out, and you can put these back in with it down on the ground. Just turn the wheel. So let me back this out. I'll get that washed up and get the inner fenders back in, and we are pretty much done. I've got a couple light bulbs I'm going to replace, but other than that, some much needed, I wouldn't say much needed, but the Yukon got a little attention here, and it's ready to tow the Jayco Eagle.